Welcome to the Front 3, the Premier League Roundup show where I talk about 3 games, 3 stories, 3 stars, and 3 stooges of the game week just gone. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get right into it. The first game that I want to highlight is Ipswich vs Fulham. It wasn't the biggest game on the slate, but it was interesting nonetheless. It started well for newly promoted Ipswich, who took control early in the game and had their hard work rewarded with an incredible Liam Delap strike after he drove to the top of the box. As a Stoke City fan, it was bittersweet seeing Delap's sweet strike for Ipswich in the top flight after a pretty quiet loan spell for us in the Championship. That finish punctuated a great start for Ipswich, who definitely seem up to the challenge in the league. But as quickly as they were winning, Fulham went back level. On the break, a sequence of sharp passing set Anthony Robinson down the left, and he whipped a low cross across the face, which made its way all the way through to Adama Traore at the back post. From that moment, Fulham seemed to establish themselves more, keeping the ball and finding opportunities to spring Robinson, Alex Iwobi, and Adama, who has looked more effective to start the season. What can be said about Ipswich, though, is that they don't cave in on themselves at any sign of pressure. They're happy to keep the ball and have plenty of ability with Delap, Amari Hutchinson, Leif Davis, Sammy Smodics, and Chiedozie Ogbene. The rest of the half was uneventful with the exception of a great entry ball for Ogbene to head across goal. Although he was inches offside, it represented Ipswich's multiple ways of creating chances, which will be essential to their survival. Ipswich came out in the second half with similar purpose, with a good few chances falling to Liam Delap after some hard work from the big striker. Fulham remained dangerous on the break through Robinson and Traore though, with a great chance falling to Emil Smith-Rowe from 12 yards out, and another strike from the former Arsenal man being deflected on the resulting corner. That was the tale of the game, an Ipswich side who were a bit more in control but needed a moment of magic to score, and a Fulham side who could create a chance out of anything. As the game progressed, it looked like neither side would score, although Ipswich were certainly better of the two. A few late chances fell to Jack Clark and Amari Hutchinson, but were turned away, leaving the sides level at full time. To come away with their first Premier League point after 2 impossible fixtures to start the season should be a good motivation for Ipswich to push on their upcoming fixtures, many of which are winnable. It was also good to see Calvin Phillips make his first start, partnering Sam Morsey in midfield, a duo which is reminiscent of an earlier era featuring 2 players who are strong in the tackle and decent passers and ball carriers. For Fulham, it was another fun performance from a team who look equipped to steer clear of relegation. Adama Traore's resurgence is fun to watch, Rodrigo Muniz is great in hold-up, Sasa Lukic is deputizing well in midfield, and the defense looks assured, especially with Robinson in great form and Anderson coming through the door. Game number 2 is Chelsea vs Crystal Palace. Clearly, I'm going to talk about Chelsea a lot this season. After a pretty toothless loss to Manchester City, they've been really exciting in attack against Wolves and now Palace, but the results in those 2 games do not reflect the same level of threat. They put 6 past Wolves, but could only muster 1 against a Palace side who's still sorting out their best defense. It wasn't for lack of trying, though. They racked up 2.37 XG against the South London side, and could have grabbed 3 or 4 in the first half from some really excellent play from the informed Madueke and Palmer in particular. Nevertheless, they did go ahead through Nico Jackson, who was set up by a great slip pass from Cole Palmer that beat the whole back line and keeper. It was never going to be easy though, and as Chelsea do, they started to drop off the intensity in the second half. Iberi Eze's strike was the moment of the second period, when he collected the ball from a deflected shot and strode to the top of the box before choosing a whipped finish into the side netting. The draw marked the first time in 14 encounters between the sides that Crystal Palace has managed to take a point away from Chelsea, which is a pretty ridiculous streak. But there was more to the game than just a 1-1 draw, especially from a tactical standpoint. Maresca seems to have settled in a starting lineup that has decent fluidity and solidity. Cucurella, Colwill, Fofana, and Gusto make up the back line, with Caicedo, Enzo, and Palmer in midfield, and Madueke, Neto, and Jackson making up the front line. But the lineup is far more interchangeable than that. There are times when Caicedo drops into center half, Cucurella or Gusto step into midfield, Palmer drifts out wide or into a deeper playmaking role, and the wingers interchange or step inside. In possession, Gusto takes up a midfield role, shifting Fofana to the right and sending Caicedo into defense. Palmer and Caicedo are the real linchpins of the team, offering skill sets that nobody else in the side can. Palmer is the team's main creative spark, while Caicedo is the only player who looks confident when defending in transition. Jackson is also essential, as his runs in behind consistently open up space for Madueke, Palmer, and Pedro Neto, who's still getting up to speed. Crystal Palace, for their part, were playing with pretty flat blocks in a 3-4-3, and there were times when their midfield players, Adam Wharton and Will Hughes, and outside central defenders, Nathaniel Klein and Chris Richards, were susceptible to passes through the lines. But in the second half, they shored up their ranks and looked much more of a threat through Eze, Daichi Kamada, and Daniel Munoz. It was a more promising display from a side that has struggled to that point, with creating much outside of Eze's moments of magic. All in all, it was a match that will likely be forgotten, but featured two sides experiencing growing pains as they try to build towards something positive. And of course, I have to talk about Manchester United and Liverpool. The featured game of the weekend, old rivals Manchester United and Liverpool squared off in a relatively one-sided contest. From the off, it was Liverpool who seemed to completely outclass and outduel United in every area of the pitch. The goals came largely from pressing high up the pitch, forcing United to make mistakes and capitalizing on them with a real clinical edge. After an opener from Trent was ruled out for offside, it was Luis Diaz who struck twice, both set up by Mo Salah and following some excellent play from the side as a whole. The combination of the high press and attacking down the wings has been highly effective so far this year, as Liverpool have scored 8 and conceded none in their 3 matches. Of course, Mo Salah got in the score sheet in the second half to round out the scoring. It would be easy to dismiss this game as another from recent memory between two clubs who are in different stratospheres, and that is still true, but there was a lot to take away from the match. First of all, United's approach is clearer this year than it has been previously under Ten Hag, and you can see a consistent formation and approach. They are second only to Liverpool in terms of pressing in the attacking third, and are clearly trying to play out from the back. Unfortunately, they have key weaknesses in the team that prevent them from executing their plan, notably their lack of assuredness in the middle of the field. Multiple times, Casemiro is at fault for losing the ball in possession, or playing an errant pass, and sometimes it seems like the game passes Kobbie Mainoo by. Add a new back line and a rotating cast of forward options who go in and out of form, and you have the recipe for teams like Liverpool to shred you apart. I found it interesting that Ten Hag opted to bench Ahmed Diallo and leave Marcus Rashford in the lineup, as Diallo offers something that neither Rashford nor Garnacho does, a real wide threat off the dribble. When Diallo came on and Casemiro went off, the game did become a bit more even, but it had been sealed by then. Ten Hag's statements after the game were also questionable, as I'm not sure how you can really defend a 3-0 loss in the way that he did. For Liverpool, it was smooth sailing once again. Luis Diaz and Ryan Gravenberch have really thrived so far under Arne Slot, allowed to occupy the roles best suited to them. Diaz's finishing has taken a step up over the past 2 matches, and Gravenberch is a wildly athletic and skilled box-to-box player. The defense, Alexis McAllister and Mo Salah are as steady as ever in their roles. I do wonder whether Darwin Núñez will have a bigger role to come, or if he'll be the odd man out in Liverpool's attack. In stark contrast to Ten Hag, Slot tends to discuss the tactical elements of the game in his post-match press, and he really illuminated the way that Liverpool undid United. He discussed the team's plans to take advantage of United's high fullbacks by playing through Diaz and Salah, as well as his commitment to maintaining Klopp's style of high press. This combination can be lethal in the Premier League, where defensive fullbacks are few and far between, and most teams struggle to play through a press reliably. Liverpool could be in for a great season. For the stories, let's start off with the biggest one of the weekend. Bournemouth came flying back from 2-0 down to beat Everton 3-2 on Saturday. After their best half of the season, Everton struck twice, grabbing a goal from the aftermath of a free kick and one from a great slip passing chipped finish. They could have had more too, with the likes of James Tarkowski and Iliman Ndiaye having golden chances. But the final 10 minutes were calamitous, surrendering the lead and turning 3 points into 0. Dango Ouattara and Semenyo combined for the first, a low cross and tap in at the back post. Then Luis Sinisterra stood the ball up for a perfectly timed late run from Lewis Cook, who nodded home to draw level in stoppage time. Kluivert then crossed in for Sinisterra to net the winner, after going unmarked at the back post. Everton absolutely needed the 3 points, and it was the first game of the season where they looked like they had a real chance. But defensively, they lost their concentration too many times. The center-backs weren't organized properly, the fullbacks were slow to pick up their marks, and midfielders weren't tracking back diligently. Tim Orobunam in particular looked lost late in the game, responsible for Cook who ghosted in behind him for the second goal. Bournemouth picked up their first win of the season after 2 draws, while Everton slumped to 0 points from 3 games. Their attack did show some promise, with Harrison putting in some good balls, Calvert-Lewin looking more lively, and Iliman Ndiaye showing creative potential. Bournemouth's resilience, meanwhile, should see them back on form after nearly falling to the Toffees. We also saw the first team in the title race drop points this season. This is a storyline that'll continue to build over the course of the year, but the title race took its first shape this week after Arsenal failed to defeat Brighton to drop their first points of the season. It was a questionable red card for Declan Rice that ultimately made the difference, as Arsenal were up 1-0 and had a strong handle on the game before the incident. More discussion of my thoughts about the decision later, but nevertheless, it changed the game. Brighton only had .09 expected goals in the first half, whereas in the second they racked up almost 2. Arsenal were able to hang on for a draw, but dropping points this early in the year will make keeping up with Man City difficult. For their part, Manchester City persevered through some pressure from West Ham to run out 3-1 victors. They've successfully managed Rodri, Foden, and Bob's absences through 3 games, as well as injuries to Savinho and Kyle Walker. Because City always ends the season strong, a 2-point lead early in the season, while it may not seem like much, can always make the difference. Of course, Liverpool is also on 9 points from 9, but I'm not sure they're true title contenders just yet. My third story is one that might have gone under the radar, but it's Aston Villa's clever free kick to set up a goal. Personally, I'm a sucker for a free kick routine, which seems to be a dying tactic in the game. But in their 2-1 victory over Leicester, Aston Villa executed a perfect free kick that had Leicester's defense on its heels. Yuri Tielemans stood over a free kick from 40-some-odd yards out, a position that normally ends with a header clear. But instead, they had 2 men run from next to Tielemans towards the box as the Belgian went to strike it. Ollie Watkins headed towards the defender, and Pau Torres set a screen of sorts on another, leaving Morgan Rogers to run through onto a simple through pass. With the defense now tracking back desperately, he cut the ball across the face, where it was ultimately finished off by Amadou Onana. More emphasis has been placed on set pieces in recent years, with Premier League teams realizing that they're missing out on potential goals through a lack of physicality on corners. But clever set-piece routines like this one are rare, so I wanted to shout out Villa's preparation that gave them a clear-cut chance that ultimately made the difference in a 2-1 game. Now, onto my 3 stars of the week. In third, it's my first time featuring a goalkeeper this season. A few seasons ago, when Dean Henderson was projected as the potential replacement for David De Gea and starting to get minutes for Manchester United, I was skeptical. Every time someone bared down on goal, it looked like he shrunk. It was an almost certain finish. Since leaving the Manchester Giants, Henderson has dealt with injuries and being second choice, and it seemed like he might not reach the heights of a Premier League regular. But I should have remembered that goalkeepers rarely start so young, and now 27, Henderson has established himself as Crystal Palace's starter. Against Chelsea at the weekend, he was immense, making several good stops as Chelsea struggled to put more than one past him. There were some routine saves, sure, but also great stops on Nico Jackson and Levi Colwill, among others. I was also impressed by his confidence, which I hadn't witnessed from him a few years ago. My second star of the weekend is Luis Sinisterra. It's rare that a substitute could get himself onto this list, but Sinisterra just about did everything right in his half an hour on the pitch. Down 2-0 when he came on, Bournemouth needed the Colombian to deliver in a big way, and he did. After a warning strike from distance, he played in a great ball for Lewis Cook to set up the equalizer. Then, he drifted in at the back post to nod home the game winner. In only 30 minutes, he grabbed 2 goal contributions on 17 touches, adding a perfect pass accuracy to boot. The Colombian alternates between the bench and starting lineup, but maybe this will be a case for him to get more minutes as the season progresses. And of course, my first star of the weekend has to be Erling Haaland. I don't usually like talking about Haaland, because it gets boring after a while, but I couldn't deny him a place on this list after adding another hat-trick to the best early season goal tally we've ever witnessed in the Premier League. From essentially 5 chances, he put away 3, which is an absolutely incredible return. His first and third goals were quintessential Haaland, running through on goal with his signature combination of speed, power, and finesse. As Graham Lasso said on commentary, it's Haaland's intensity that really stands out. He may not touch the ball many times, but with every opportunity he springs into action. His second goal was another classic Haaland finish, this time from a shuttled pass off Rico Lewis that he blasted into the roof of the net off a quick first touch. Lasso also noted that he thought Haaland was the best finisher he had seen since Alan Shearer, and I think that observation is astute. Haaland is such a confident player when he gets a chance, and I'd always back him to score. Not only that, but the Norwegian has all of the athleticism that Alan Shearer lacked, making him a nearly unstoppable force. For every star, though, there's a stooge, and my third stooge of the week is the Brazilian holding midfielder Casemiro. The decorated player was caught in possession and gave the ball away several times in the first half against Liverpool, including 2 turnovers that resulted in Luis Diaz's goals to open the scoring. He just looks slow on the ball out there, which isn't good enough against any side, let alone a top team like Liverpool who can break so quickly. Ten Hag was forced to haul him off at halftime, and they looked better after his removal. It's hard to imagine he'll continue to get regular minutes, especially against the top sides, as Manuel Ugarte arrives from PSG. My second stooge of the week is not a player, but a referee. VAR is usually the topic of discussion when it comes to refereeing, but this week it's an on-field ref who takes the flak for his game-changing decision. In the 49th minute of Arsenal vs Brighton, Declan Rice got in a tangle with Joel Veltman, with the whistle being blown for a foul on the Englishman. As he got up, he shifted the ball to the side slightly before being clobbered by Veltman. After a scuffle, the referee awarded a second yellow to Rice for delaying a restart. I have a problem with the decision though. Well, more than one problem. First, Rice hardly kicked the ball away as much as he simply touched it to the side. Regardless, the ball was rolling, which would have invalidated the restart. Veltman doesn't even seem to go for the ball, which had already been knocked away before he went to kick it, and as a result, his swing was less of a kick and more of a lash out at Rice. Veltman is also the one who knocks the ball forward towards Rice, both taking it away from the original spot of the foul and putting the ball directly into Rice's space. If he really wanted to take a quick free kick and not bait a yellow card, he would have instead grabbed the ball, stuck it down in the same place, and taken the free kick. Instead, he kicked it forward towards Rice and then rushed to take it. Adding to the argument that he didn't truly want to take a quick free kick was the position of the foul. It was in Brighton's defensive corner, hardly a place to spring an attack. Finally, there were other instances in the game, and in every Premier League game, where players delay restarts or time waste, most of which are not punished with a card. The noise around referees sometimes gets too loud and angry, verging towards downright abusive, and this call isn't necessarily incorrect based on the letter of the law, so I'm not just abusing Chris Kavanagh here. But I think awarding a yellow card, especially a second yellow, for a type of transgression that isn't always punished equally, is a dangerous game to play. I prefer there to be greater discretion in whether or not something is actually a yellow card offense based on its severity, not based on what referee is officiating, or the text itself. Subjectivity does have a role in refereeing, but the rules around delaying restarts and time wasting need to be looked at once again. And finally, my first stooge of the week is Jadon Sancho. The Jadon Sancho at Manchester United experiment has finally concluded, with his final stats reading 12 goals and 6 assists in 83 matches. But I don't think he's a stooge for not sticking with United. It's his destination that I'm confused about. Chelsea is currently a place where talent goes to die, and I can't see why Sancho would meet a different fate than someone like Raheem Sterling, who has a much more proven record. I think he'll be behind Palmer, Nkunku, Jackson, Felix, Neto, Madueke, and Dewsbury Hall for starting berths in the front line, competing with the likes of Mudryk and Guiu to merely make up a place in the squad. For a player who thrives on confidence, unless he gets handed the keys, which seems highly unlikely, I don't see why Chelsea and Enzo Maresca, who are cutthroat in their squad building, would be the right environment for him to thrive. I hope he proves me wrong. Well, that's all for this week, and now we take a week off for the international break. Leave a comment with your stars and stooges of the game week, subscribe, and see you when the Premier League is back.